Language courses aren't for everybody, and in this video I'll tell you why. You might have been someone who's tried a language course in the past and it's just not quite right for you. When you went to buy the course, you pressed buy and you might have paid a couple of £100 for it or dollars, and it's not quite what you expected. You get into it and it's interesting, but then you want to be able to learn the language and you have expectations of what you should get out of it by the end. However, your expectations have not been met and you're still struggling to reach the level you want to be at. In this video, I'm going to tell you why language courses aren't for everybody and what you can do instead, and the actions you can take if you're on a language course and you're not quite feeling it at the moment. Point number one, language courses teach you everything at once. They're not specific to your goals. For example, if I want to learn Spanish, it might be so I can get by when I'm on holiday. I might want to go into a restaurant or into a bar or somewhere and ask for food. In that case, that's perfect, but I don't need to know the word for grandma or granddad or tree in that language in that case. However, courses normally consist of a group of people, maybe 10 or 12 people, or maybe even smaller, maybe 6 people. However, this doesn't provide value for each person in the way it should do. So essentially, if I want to learn Spanish so I can communicate and order food in a restaurant or a bar when I'm in Barcelona on holiday, for example, someone else might want to learn it to speak with their family or foreign family in a different country. And in that case, they'll be wanting to learn these different family member names or maybe different types of greetings to use. So the type of language that we need to learn in different situations is different. However, language courses don't accommodate this. They are more of a quick platform to get you from zero to a certain level, but they cover everything because in that sense you're paying to get to know the language itself rather than the bits that you need it for. But that's not everyone's cup of tea. That's not what everyone wants. You might just want to know bits and bobs for when you go on holiday, and that's it. In that case, a language course could be useful for you, but you'd be wasting a good chunk of your money, maybe 90% of the money that you're spending, on not the relevant bits. The relevant bits that you might use might be only 10% of that course. So in essence, if you're paying £100 for that course, you're only getting £10 worth of value because that's the bits that you need are only a tenth of what's covered. This is also a negative because it's irrelevant stuff that you're trying to learn. So if you're putting effort into learning a different language outside of your main day job or in your spare time, and you're doing this via Zoom live language course with other people, then you're putting a lot of time and effort into it. But then if you're trying to learn stuff that's not relevant, then you're wasting that because you're best to start with a small scenario, first of all, and build on what you know, gain evidence that you're learning it bit by bit. So trying to learn everything at once can actually be detrimental to see progress because then that can hinder progress if you're wasting time and energy learning stuff that you don't actually need to know and stuff that doesn't interest you right now. If you're not really interested in speaking about grandmas or about wildlife and nature, I might be interested in just talking about ordering food at a restaurant, so that's completely different. Essentially, you have to be emotionally invested and somewhat interested in the stuff that you're learning because then that helps your brain to identify it as important because you've got an emotional connection to it because it's relevant to what you want to actually learn. The second point is as soon as someone starts to share their screen online, if for example you're on an online language course, then mentally, I know I experience it myself, but mentally you'll zone out. As soon as someone shares their screen, you see little exercises, my mind just clicks out. It's because I can see effort coming towards me. That's the reason behind it. And what's happening here is your brain identifies it as effort. So really, you're on that course because it takes you less effort and less time to reach your language goals, and someone's teaching you the language rather than you having to work out what to do yourself. That's why you pay for a language course. However, as soon as someone shares a screen, it's telling your brain you're used to when information is shared with you, you have to put effort in to understand what's going on, to read it, to understand it, and that effort. Your brain doesn't like that because it thinks, wait, what's going on here? I require less effort for this. I don't want to put in that much effort. So it sort of goes on standby a little bit when a screen is shared. And an example is when a teacher, for example, on your course is sharing grammatical exercises and they're asking person after person, okay, James, can you fill in this blank, please, for this sentence when there's a missing word, for example. And I might be going, oh yeah, okay, and I have to think about what word it could be. The words might be at the top as an example, and I've got to put the right words with the right sentence. That's one example exercise. But because it requires effort, my mind zones out. And you can only share your screen for a certain amount of time before you sort of start thinking about what you're having for dinner and all the random things. Your mind goes on a tangent. It daydreams a little bit. So what's the solution to this? Well, the ideal situation is that you don't share a screen. You don't share information in that way. In the same sense that if I'm living, for example, in Spain and I'm hanging out with Spanish people and having fun, going for a few drinks or just socializing in general, essentially, that's fun because I might be speaking with friends and it's fun. I'm meeting new people and asking them about their day. even if my Spanish isn't that good. But most likely, if you're watching this video, you will have tried a few different things. You will have already reached a certain level. You will be able to have a broken conversation at the minimum because you've put the effort in so far. That's why you're watching this video. However, if you're on a language course at the moment and you can't focus on what's going on, then think about the situation you're in. Think about, is a teacher sharing their screen? Is it making me zone out? Is it quite boring? Is the conversation fun? Quite often it can be as simple as, if the teacher makes a joke or the other students are having a conversation and joking around in your target language, that helps massively. Because if you're enjoying the conversation and the flow of conversation in the language, even if you're not understanding everything, that matters so much more than just staring at a screen and you don't understand what's going on and you're thinking, you want to check your phone, you're in the course, but it only works if you put the right amount of effort in doing the right thing. You're already putting effort into it, right, by turning up and showing up. That's step one. But you need to actually enjoy the process as well. You need to enjoy the act of being there so that you can put the right kind of effort in. Otherwise, you'll zone out and you'll be wasting your money because you're going through a course that you're not learning from, because everyone has different learning styles. Point number 3. Teachers quite often in courses, they read out vocabulary. Now, I'm not trying to say every single course is really bad, but I'm just trying to say a few examples that I've noticed where the teaching isn't as good as it could be. So essentially what happens is when we try and learn vocabulary on normal courses, the teacher reads out word by word. We're expected to memorize each word just off the top of our heads. We memorize words relating to a certain situation. However, your mind doesn't work like this. If you are out and about in Spain or in the country where your target language is spoken, we learn by context. So we're walking around the shop and we're seeing a banana, or we're seeing fruits, and we can see the label of what it's called, and we're like, okay, that's interesting. We see a price. Oh, okay, that's cool. I can see the object. I can see the price. I have now thoughts about what I could do with that item. Maybe I can cook it later. Maybe I can make a lasagna with it, or a really nice dish with it. What could I do with that? And because you're thinking about that, your mind is now having an emotional attachment to it, which means that later on, when you're thinking about the item of food in that different language, you can remember it because your mind has context with it. Whereas, alternatively, if you're reading that in a list of other things, it's just letters on a screen. So you're not going to have an emotional attachment or connection or reference that in anything that you know already. There's no context associated with it. So in courses where teachers share their screen and they read out different words and ask you to read it back to them, you might have a really hard time. You might already relate to this when it's hard to just remember words that someone's thrown at you with no context. But then different context, say if you're out and about or you're having a meal, you might remember this. La cuenta, por favor, is like the bill, please, in Spanish. I learned that even without knowing what the individual words meant. I just knew that you say la cuenta, por favor, when you want the bill in a Spanish restaurant. So that's one example of I didn't even know the meaning behind it, but that was a ready-made phrase with the grammar already done in it, and I remembered it better because I knew that when I'm at a restaurant in that situation, when I love to go out and eat, that's what I say. So to summarise on that point, you need context and association attached to the words and phrases that you're learning in order for it to actually sink in. Now the final point here, I've said this many times before, but I'll say it again, it's too long. The study sessions are too long. Now I've done both Spanish and Italian courses in the past, and I zone out after 20-25 minutes, even half an hour. That's why when I do lessons now on a one-to-one basis, it's only half an hour, because our attention spans as humans are about 20 to 25 minutes. After that, the amount of effort we put in it, we don't really absorb much else, and you'll notice that because you'll start thinking about other things. And if a teacher's saying something, you might zone out, especially if it's a group class where you can have the ability to zone out because you're not constantly having to maintain conversation with someone. So you have the ability to zone out. And that's quite bad because if you have a 2-hour lesson, number one, the first thing about that is that if you're a busy person, you've got a really hectic schedule, it's very difficult to fit that 2 hours into your schedule, especially if you have a 9 to 5 job or you're doing it after work. You're going to be absolutely knackered. You're not going to be able to focus as well. So that's one issue with it. The best situation really is to have short lessons more frequently across the week rather than having like 1 2-hour lesson or 2 2-hour lessons across the week. That's too big of a chunk of time to be able to really take in what you're listening to. Instead, it should really be laid out half an hour sessions, quite to the point. That might be too little for a group session, for example. But if it's 45 minutes to an hour, that's a perfect amount of time to allow you to zone out a little bit, understandably, when other students are speaking to the teacher. Maybe you can daydream a little bit then, but you have to allow yourself to be able to not be 100% focused, because that's not really possible if you're focusing for at least 20-25 minutes. You zone out a little bit. That's just natural. It's what humans do. So realistically, it should be more short and more frequent. So maybe 3 times a week at 45 minutes or an hour, rather than once or twice a week at a longer duration. Ultimately, you will have already tried courses in the past, and you might be currently taking a language course now, in which case, brilliant, that sounds good. They're not perfect for everybody, but they might be good for some people. Some people might like it as just a quick way of getting from, I know absolutely zero Spanish or Italian at all, and I want to quickly learn it in a few weeks' time for a holiday that I'm going on. That's brilliant. But if you're finding that you're zoning out, or you're not really getting on with it, it's not you. The main thing is, I want you to know that it's not you that's the problem. It's the way in which you're trying to learn the language that's the issue. Quite often people, well, everyone has a different way of learning a language. I have a way which is speaking with people. I absolutely hate doing grammar, so I have to learn grammar and learn new words by socializing with people. I have friends in Italy and Spain where every time I go over there, I learn so much more than I have done at home or just learning it myself. So just understand the way that you learn languages, and a language course might not be for you for those reasons that I've just mentioned. So while this video might be like me saying, oh yeah, language courses are rubbish, don't go with them, that's not true. They're just not for everybody. And instead, if you can relate to any of these reasons, then the alternative for you may be one-to-one lessons with native speakers on a half-an-hour basis or 25-minute basis instead. And Preply, as an example, I'm not sponsored by Preply, but I use it myself. That can be a lot better for you if you want to just learn a few phrases, or if you want to learn the language for a specific situation. For example, ordering at a bar or a restaurant, you can ask the teacher to teach you just that. And also you can fit it around your lifestyle in half-an-hour chunks, so it's so much easier then. And also you can ask them not to share their screen, but to have conversation with you. And any words that you don't know or you're learning, they can just type it into the chat. That's fine, because then if they say, oh yeah, if you want to ask for the bill in Spanish, you use this word or this phrase, then you know it because you have context associated with it, even though they're writing it down. Alongside that, you can also passively listen. So if you have a podcast, if you're on your commute to work, or you have, say, an hour or two spare every day, listen to a podcast while you're driving. You don't have to understand every bit of it, but it at least gives you an idea of the rhythm of the language, and it gives you more exposure at times when you didn't think you could have time to learn the language. You can still learn the language by passively listening to it when you're in a car or commuting. One final thing is that I've made a range of free email courses that will help you to achieve your language goals in less time and with less effort. There's a load of links below, and also a list of free downloads as well that will help you get so much closer to your language goals in less time. That's it for now. YouTube is going to recommend a video that you'll find useful, and it will get you closer to your language goals. So click the recommendation video, and I'll see you later.